What is up, though, Lions fans? It's your boy Chef, and we are back. You already know what time it is. It is time for the YAK Pod, episode number 21. Now, this time we are going to be talking a little bit about Brad Holmes' philosophy when it comes to the draft and free agency. So I know you're excited about this one, so let's get right to it. Now, starting out, we have a tweet from Will Birchfield, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I cannot confirm or deny the validity of this tweet, but it says that Lions GM Brad Holmes says he's always felt more comfortable filling needs in free agency. The quote says, "In the draft, there's only a subset of those true cornerstone players that you can identify. If you pass those players over trying to fill a need, I think you get yourself in trouble." All right. So what is Brad saying? BPA, right? Best player available. So sometimes we feel like, okay, we need a corner or we need an edge, but that best player available, that cornerstone player, is what he drafts. And then we get upset about it. A lot of people got upset about the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, the electrician, as I call him. I, for one, was not upset about that pick. A lot of people were upset about the Jack Campbell pick. People were upset about the Sam Laporta pick. People were upset about a lot of picks, but we see Brad hit on these picks over and over and over again. So it may not be a position of extreme need or whatever the case may be, because they're going best player available. If they can get the best guy that they've identified on their board, they're going to go and get them. And that's pretty much what he is saying with this quote. We also understand that last Friday, the news was released that the salary cap was bumped up by about $30 million. Now, this doesn't mean that every team got an extra $30 million. The Lions got about an extra $12 million, an actual liquid cap that they could deal with. You know, they have some dead cap money and things of this nature. So they got about $12 million. They went up from 54, where were they? They were somewhere around 10 to 12 million. All right, so we're sitting at like 65, almost $66 million in cap space. So everyone is thinking now, okay, let's go ahead and get us a bigger fish in free agency, or a few big fish in free agency. But Brad Holmes, when appearing on 97 Won the Ticket, he had this to say when they asked him about getting a possibly bigger fish in free agency. He said that's very relative in terms of what is a bigger fish. We've kind of kept it pretty strategic and selective in terms of the resources that we've had, but it's very subjective of what you deem a bigger fish. I think I have an idea because it's the name, but again, it's gonna be the same approach that we've always had, because I think I said in that press conference, it's easy to win the headlines. It's easy to win in March. That's easy to win, but man, we're trying to win December. And those are two different perspectives. And that's how we've got to plan. And that's how you've got to approach it. So is he going to make a big splash? I don't know. But he has another quote from that interview. And he says, I think when you look externally, which I think that's when you've got to be the most careful. When you go externally, you might want to open up. And do you want to externally say, we can get another depth player here with external ad, or do you want to just say we have this handful of players that we're looking to add from an external standpoint? Now that we have this much more available, maybe we can get a bigger fish. So it's a lot of different ways you can slice it. You've just got to be mindful of it. Keep it in perspective, but I don't think you need to scrap your plans. So that was a lot of we don't know what Brad Holmes is going to do, okay? But we do understand that his philosophy is to keep strategic with it. We haven't seen Brad Holmes with any money. And that's the issue, so no one can really put their finger on what he's going to do or try to figure out what he's going to do, because there's really no precedent. If we say the first year that he came in, we were in cap hell. We had contracts on the book that shouldn't have been on the books, and we couldn't really do anything with those. In the second year, it was a better situation, but it still wasn't quite great. But he did go out and get pieces. I guess you could call it from the bargain bin, because he got Emmanuel Mosley, who turned out to be injured just as he was when he was signed. He got Cam Sutton on a cheap deal, David Montgomery, Graham Glasgow, but these were major pieces. Graham Glasgow and David Montgomery turned out to be major pieces. David Montgomery, we know what he did. We know what Graham Glasgow did, especially after Big V went down. Graham Glasgow pretty much became the starter. So that was a valuable signing. Both of those signings were very valuable. Cam Sutton's signing was valuable until he got the turf toe injury, and everyone wanted to call him trash, and they calling them things like Sutton Toast and all of this craziness. And I really hope that Cam Sutton has a bounce back year next year, so everyone can just get off his back. Like I said, turf toe is a huge injury to have to deal with, especially as a defensive back. When you're backpedaling, when you're moving side to side, you need your toes. And if your toe has been turfed, it's very, very difficult. But that was his plan, and that was his course of action last year. Now we have more money than we've ever had during his tenure here, so we don't really know what he's going to do. He did allude to being strategic and continuing to go at the same pace that he's going in free agency. Remember, in the press conference, he did also say everybody can't play in Detroit. So that means what? Everyone is not a Dan Campbell guy. Everyone is not a Brad Holmes guy. So we can't just look at the name, as he said, and think, oh, we've got the money, let's go ahead and get that player. I feel like if they can identify that one of these players is that type of guy that they covet, the one that has the grit, the one that has the want to, the one that has the hunger and the desire, I think that you'll see that they would sign him. If they identified a L'Jarius Sneed as being one of those guys, if they identified a Stephon Gilmore as being one of those guys, if they identified someone at a position of need, and as he said, he feels more comfortable filling positions of need in free agency, right? And I like that philosophy, because if you're filling positions of need in free agency, which happens before the draft, free agency happens before the draft, so you're filling your needs, right? And that's what you're using that for. You're using that to fill your needs. Now, when you go to the draft, you can go ahead and get the best player available. Okay? If that player is a corner, the best player available, and you've signed a corner, great. Right? But if you signed a corner and the best player available is an edge rusher, great. If you signed an edge rusher and a corner and the best player available is an edge rusher, that's fantastic. So what I'm saying to you is, in free agency, that's when you fill your holes, so your plan for the draft can just be what you want it to be. We want to get those cornerstone players, and if they fall to us, or if we're able to move up to get one, like I said in my last episode, when we're talking about Jared Verse. Jared Verse has been mocked to go anywhere from number 5 to number 13. So he can be a top 5 pick, or he can be in the middle. If he goes 15, if he gets there, please believe that Brad Holmes would not hesitate to pull the trigger if he has identified Jared Verse as one of those types of guys. If he's identified him as a high motor, high character, gritty, never stop, never give up, kneecap biter, get knocked down, take a chunk off your kneecap, on the way back up. If he's identified him as that type of guy, do not be surprised to see him move up to 15. We've got that extra 3rd round pick. If you've filled your needs in free agency properly and adequately, then what happens? Now, if you move up to get a Jared Verse, now your defense is infinitely better, because you've got your defensive line help, not in the draft, but first in free agency. You got your cornerback help in free agency. Now, when you're in the draft, you're playing with house money. If you've got L'Jarius Sneed or someone comparable, if you've got a Stephon Gilmore, if you've got a Xavier Howard, if you've got one of these guys, then let's say Nate Wiggins is falling. We can trade up to get a Nate Wiggins. I don't think Terrion Arnold is going to fall, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, we could go up and make moves because the draft capital will then kind of revert to the LA Rams situation where it's like F those picks. So yeah, okay, you've got 7-8 picks in the draft. F those picks. Let's make 4 picks. Let's make 4 selections or 5 selections or whatever the case may be, because we've been wheeling and dealing and moving around in the draft to attain the guys that we have identified as Brad Holmes guys, as Dan Campbell guys. So I think that's what his philosophy is going to be. I don't think that there's going to be a huge splash in free agency unless that is a Dan Campbell type of guy, unless that guy has all of the grit and intangibles and all these things that we talk about. If we look at a Chris Jones, if we look at a Justin Matabuke, people like them, do they have those intangibles? Are they those types of guys? I don't know. But if they are, I would not be surprised for Brad Holmes to go ahead and do that. Like, as I said, we are in uncharted waters. We are in unprecedented waters. We don't know what he's going to do, but he has given little tidbits, right? On the one hand, he's saying it's probably not going to make us a big splash. He's probably just going to go ahead and be strategic. But on the other hand, he's saying, well, we've got this extra money. Maybe we could make a bigger splash. Maybe we could get a bigger fish. And who knows what a bigger fish is to Brad Holmes. As he said, it's subjective. What do you think of as a big fish? A $10 million a year signing might be a big fish to Brad Holmes, whereas a $25 million a year signing is a big fish to us because we're looking at the name value. But Brad Holmes could spend that $10 million and get a guy that he really likes, that he's identified, that him and Dan Campbell have identified as someone who's a perfect fit for the team. And he's not currently on the roster, right? So that's the external thing that he was talking about. So that could be a big fish to them. So again, big fish is subjective. So let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Hey, we're all friends here. We can all talk about it. We don't all have to agree. But if you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments below. Smash that like button, subscribe. You've got to be a friend. You've got to tell a friend. You've got to let them know what's going on in this kitchen. You got to let them know what we're cooking up in here. As always, I will see you next time. Peace.